So first, your expectation and or preference comes directly from the things on your self map. It is a directly correlative response. If you are someone who is really attached to something, then you have a strong expectation and or preference regarding that thing. If you're not so attached to something, like, maybe grandma has a cold versus your cousin in Ireland who you've never met has a cold, right? You're going to be more concerned about grandma turning that into pneumonia and ending up in the hospital than your younger healthy cousin off in Ireland somewhere where you're not even going to get the update that they're over the cold, right? You're going to have a lower level acute emotion based on how connected you are to people. But every one of your expectations and preferences comes off of your self map. So if it's not on your self map, you don't care about it. You don't have an expectation or preference about it, which is why you're going to have apathy regarding perceptions that come through that don't mean anything to you. Okay. Now, the self map is, of course, everything that you think is you, everything that you associate with you being you. And the expectation or preference rule is very simple. Everything on your self map must be held at status quo or increased in value, or we're going to have a problem. It's that simple. So you want your team to win the big game? Well, you want them to at least come out with, if you're a soccer fan, you want them to at least come out with a tie, or you want them to come out with a win. It's got to be a valuation that is increased or status quo, or you're going to have a problem. And so everything that's on your self map must be held at status quo or increased in value, and that creates an individual equation of emotion every time one of these things comes up. So for every single thing on your self map, I want to have a good hair day. I want to make sales quota this year. I want to sell a bunch of products. I want to be able to land this whatever client. I want everybody in my family to be healthy. I want my team to win the big game. All of these expectations and or preferences create a singular equation of emotion that then gets filled with a perception associated with that equation of emotion. And if they balance, you get a happy emotion. If they imbalance, you get a negative emotion. If either one of those things don't exist, but if we're pulling from our self map, then the only thing that wouldn't exist is your perception about something about it, then you're not going to have an emotion about it yet, until you get a perception associated with those things that are on your self map. Okay? That's simple. So, for instance, you have an expectation that you prefer certain politics, and you see an article about the politics. Your perception comes with an appraisal of whether that's positive or negative, and whether your appraisal whether it's positive or negative is going to dictate your emotional reaction about that article and who wrote it, how it was written, what it was about, etc. If you have an expectation or preference about a job project and you have a perception come through about that job project with an appraisal, then you're going to have an emotional reaction about that job project, whether positive or negative, based on your perception and appraisal of what the thought was that's coming through, or what the piece of information you just got in an email was. Okay? And this is for everything. You have an expectation or preference about your body shape, and you look in the mirror, or you go to the MD and he goes, "You're too fat," like is what he's telling me every time I go see him, then you're going to have a negative emotion associated with that perception, associated with, or positive perception if you're hitting on all cylinders and you're working out and you look great. And your perception is your other side of the equation of emotion, and your perception is a little more malleable than your expectation or preference. Your expectation or preference is automatically set by the things you care about on your self map. We all have things on our self map that we can remove or move around to make our life a little bit better. So now you're going to be able to understand how to do that, and how to do that mindfully, to take something that maybe has been causing a lot more negative emotion in your life and move it off towards the edge to where you don't care about it as much, or even sweep it off the edge of the map. Your perception is the other thing that you can grab and alter at will if you prefer to do so. Now, your perception is how you see things that happen around you in the world. It creates 100% of half of 100% of your emotional reactions. You have to have a perception with an appraisal process, and it must be there to create 100% of the emotions you have in your life.